He didn't look like a monster. Neighbors knew him as the guy who fixed cars, who waved, who cracked jokes. And for 25 years, while the city argued about budgets and headlines chased other disasters, someone was hunting women in the neighborhoods around Florence, Western and Avalon. The papers would later call him the Grim Sleeper because he seemed to disappear for 14 years, then start again. But the truth is simpler and darker. He didn't stop. He just wasn't caught. Summer heat clings to everything. The first bodies appear in back alleys and vacant lots. Young black women, most struggling with poverty, some with addiction, some simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. A small caliber handgun, close range, fast. The case is open with a few paragraphs in the Metro section. No one says the word serial, not yet. Back then, South LA is still rebuilding from years of disinvestment. Street lights fail. Phones don't always ring at the precinct. In community meetings, mothers ask why no one is connecting the dots. Detectives say they're working it. They are, but the work is scattered, shifting between units. Files pile up. Evidence sits in storage because the lab is swamped. Somewhere a man takes notes in his head, tightens a lug nut on a neighbor's car, and blends back into the background. One night a woman gets into a car. She's tough, funny, used to talking her way out of trouble. The driver seems ordinary, a familiar face even. The ride turns. She's struck, assaulted, and shot. She wakes hours later on a sidewalk, bleeding but alive, and does something rare in stories like this. She goes to the hospital and tells detectives everything she can remember. Peach-colored car, soft voice, pictures taken, a house with trophies on the wall. Her courage becomes a map that investigators will return to again and again, even when the case goes cold. Her name is recorded, her medical bullet fragment sealed in an envelope, and the file waits for technology that doesn't exist yet. Bodies keep appearing. The city changes. Crack cocaine floods the blocks. Gangs fight for corners. Homicide detectives catch 5 new cases in a week. The pattern is there, but it swims in a sea of other blood. The women's faces, daughters, sisters, mothers, blur into each other on the murder board. The task force gets a name, 800. They log leads, knock on doors, and argue over caliber charts. Reporters move on to fresher fires, then silence. Years pass without a new body that obviously fits. People try to believe it's over. Families fold funeral programs into drawers. Surviving witnesses heal the best they can. Somewhere, a mechanic keeps a tidy garage and repairs city vehicles for a paycheck. A camera sits in a closet with rolls of film inside. A groundskeeper in South LA finds a woman behind a business. The scene is all too familiar. Same general area, same kind of weapon, same cruel efficiency. It's as if a door that was only resting on its hinges swings open, and the cold air of the old cases pours back out. Detectives say it plainly now. The killer is back, or maybe he never left. This time something is different. The DNA technology that didn't exist in the 80s is now routine. The bullets are the same type. The geography rhymes, and the community, led by women who have been shouting for years that something is deeply wrong, refuses to let the case drift. Activists organize weekly meetings. Flyers stapled to telephone poles. A $500,000 reward is posted. Pressure rises. On the 9th floor of the lab, a scientist pulls old swabs from evidence boxes and begins the slow work of building genetic profiles. The flower dust of the past becomes data, and data becomes a single code that can be compared to millions. Weeks later, a hit, not to a person, but to a family. A young man arrested on a weapons charge lands in the state database. His DNA doesn't match the murder scenes, but it's close. Too close to be a coincidence. Familial DNA analysis points to a relative, a father or an uncle. The task force leans forward. They build a quiet list of men related to the new arrestee. One name glows. Lonnie David Franklin Jr., 57, lives in South LA, works as a city trash collector and later as a mechanic. Friendly, handy, invisible. Surveillance starts. The team watches him grocery shop, chat with neighbors, slip behind the wheel of a nondescript car. They need his DNA, legally, cleanly, without tipping him off. One afternoon, detectives pose as busboys at a pizza joint where he eats. Franklin finishes a slice, wipes his mouth, and drops the crust into the trash. A plainclothes officer retrieves it the second he's out the door. At the lab, technicians swab the saliva. The machine hums. Bars rise on a screen and align with the profiles from the 1980s and 2007. It's the same man. An unmarked van rolls to a stop. Detectives step out, followed by a forensics team and a truck with evidence crates. A warrant lands on a front door. Inside the small house, investigators move room by room. The garage smells like oil and old rubber. The closets smell like cedar chips. In a refrigerator, they find ammunition. In drawers and boxes, they find cameras, photo albums, hundreds of pictures of women, many smiling, some clearly taken without consent. Walls that once looked like any other walls are suddenly crowded with ghosts. Neighbors gather on the sidewalk and stare. "Lonnie," someone says, "he fixed my alternator." The normalness is part of the horror. Monsters rarely wear horns. They wear work boots and carry toolboxes, and they know everyone's schedule. The arrest makes headlines across the country. Reporters descend on the block. Families of victims show up with pictures and grief you can feel across the street. The nickname, Grim Sleeper, sticks because it sounds like a story, but if you ask the mothers, they'll tell you there was nothing dreamy about those years. There was only a long, preventable wait. Prosecutors build their case carefully: ballistics, fibers, phone records. The survivor from the 1980s sits down with detectives again and describes the house, the photos, the car color she never forgot. Scientists compare old bullet fragments and modern test fires. The same small caliber signature repeats. The DNA evidence ties scene after scene to the same source. The defense argues contamination, coincidence, shadows. The jury listens. Faces look older than the photos in the binders. Some family members hold hands. Some hold programs from funerals that are now decades old. When the prosecution opens the binders of recovered photographs, a hush moves through the room. Many of the women in the images are still unidentified. A reminder that the case is bigger than the charges on the page. One by one, experts walk through the evidence. One by one, the names of 10 murdered women are spoken into the microphone. Their stories pieced back together from reports and memories. The verdict comes in like the weather you knew was coming, but still feel in your bones. Guilty on 10 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. The survivor who walked out and kept the door open for everyone who couldn't. The sentence is death. In the gallery, some cry, some whisper thanks, some just stare at the man who lived among them like a neighbor. Back outside, the cameras want to talk about the killer. The community wants to talk about something else, the victims, and what took so long. Activists remind anyone listening that these were Black women from poor neighborhoods, and that if the first bodies had been found in wealthier zip codes, the task force would have gotten more detectives, more lab time, more pressure, sooner. They are not wrong. The case becomes 2 stories braided together: the hunt for a serial murderer and the reckoning with who gets urgency in America and who gets silence. In a quieter part of the city, the survivor finally exhales. For years, she carried a scar that told her body the story every time she took a deep breath. She described the car, the photos, the hands, and many people doubted her because they didn't want the truth. The conviction proves what she said the first night in a hospital gown. She had looked at the face and lived. If the Grim Sleeper had any natural enemy, it was a woman who refused to be erased. Lonnie Franklin Jr. spends his final years on death row. In 2020, he dies in prison. There is no last interview that explains anything worth hearing. No apology that could carry the weight of the names on the charge sheet, let alone the names that never made it onto it. Sometimes evil is just persistence plus opportunity and the shape of a city that makes both too easy. South LA keeps living. Mothers still double knot their kids' shoes and walk them past the places that used to be empty lots. Streetlights are brighter now. The lab is faster. The idea of familial DNA is no longer exotic. It's policy. And on some afternoons, someone new sits in the same park where detectives once went door to door and tells a teenager, if your friend doesn't make it home, you keep asking questions. If the city thinks your grief won't trend, you make it trend. You learn the names of your neighbors. You remember the names of the women. Back at the evidence building, there are still photographs taken from Franklin's house that no one can match to a missing persons report. Every few months, a detective opens that binder and tries again. A face might become a name might become a call to a family who never stopped wondering. Closure is the wrong word. There isn't a door to close, but truth has a way of arriving late and still being worth it. The legend of the Grim Sleeper says he slept for 14 years. The record says otherwise. The city slept. Budget slipped. Attention slipped. A killer learned how easily a person can vanish if no one can afford to amplify their face. The ending of this story is a conviction. The lesson is who we notice and when. He was a mechanic, a neighbor, a man who smiled and waved. He was also, for decades, the shadow at the edge of the block. He is gone now. What stays is a promise the city owes to the women whose lives he stole. That their names are the headline, not the footnote. That the next pattern is seen sooner. That the loudest voices in the room are the ones that used to be ignored. For the women still unidentified in recovered photographs, you are not forgotten.